Here we go. History in the making.
Green.
Homestead has officially become the season finale for 2026. And has Texas now officially become as treacherous as Darlington? Hi, this is Brett McMillan. You're listening to the Pit Reporters. With me this week, Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic and Zach Sterniolo from NASCAR.com.
Welcome to the Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network. And now, here's your host, Brett McMillan.
Welcome to the show. Glad to have Zach and Jordan here. And good timing for Jordan to be here because this week the story was confirmed that he broke a couple of weeks ago. Homestead is indeed going to be the host of the 2026 season finale. Congratulations on breaking the story a couple of weeks ago. And
just got lucky.
No luck involved. He was all over it. This is one of these stories that is being universally praised, which is highly unusual in this sport.
Yeah, it's funny. I would say, NASCAR fans will argue anything, right? You tell them the sky is blue, they'll say it's red. And then in the industry itself, everybody's always got different opinions. This is one of the rare exceptions where I would say 99.9% of people, fans, media, industry, team, whomever, are all in agreement. Fantastic move, home run, kudos to NASCAR, way to go. A lot of excitement, and NASCAR deserves a lot of praise for this because this isn't an easy thing for them to do. Like, they're having to foot the bill on this, and this is something that they went to the city and the state and the county and tried to get some funding to generate some different things, and it hasn't materialized yet, and we don't know if it will. But they still looked at this, NASCAR did, and said, hey, this is something we need to do for the good of the sport. The racing is too good there. That's too good of a market. We've made a lot of inroads there. It's time to move it away from Phoenix. Let's bring it back home to Homestead.
Well, underscoring that, and Zach, get to you in a second, but were they disappointed with what was going on in Phoenix?
It's not really a disappointment, more that it was just time. Like, Phoenix was never supposed to be a long-term, decade-long thing. Now, it's only been there at 5-6 years, but it was never even supposed to be necessarily that long. Don't forget, Fontana was supposed to be redone by now. And, Fontana's in the LA market, and that was a short track. Like, you put two and two together, and you can kind of see where that was going to go. And so Phoenix is just, it ran its course. Like, and it doesn't feel new and fresh and exciting anymore. And you need something different. And that's why the other piece of this, and I don't think it can be said enough, is the rotation. It's like you're going to have every year, likely, because NASCAR's hedging its bets a little bit, but likely going to have a different venue hosting the championship. But that's really neat because every year it's going to be like, oh, this is the championship track. And among fans and competitors alike, it's going to create a little bit of buzz and energy and excitement.
So when Penske wins the championship again in 2026, what are the fans going to say, Zach?
They're going to say, I still don't know that they're going to get the credit for it because people forget that Joey Logano won his first championship at Homestead too. But I think, to Jordan's point, the racing product at Homestead has been so good for so long, and especially in this next-gen car, we've seen 1.5-mile racetracks be where this car shines. Why not have a venue that has experience hosting the championship race, host it with this car, give it a chance to really shine under this particular banner? I think the rotation point, to your point, Jordan, is a really interesting part of all of this because we've heard that Phoenix is still going to remain part of that rotation, whatever that rotation looks like. We don't have the details of that yet, but we've seen the capital investment into Phoenix and how much that has improved the facilities around the Phoenix racetrack. That place is a phenomenal racetrack, and it really is a good host for what the championship race and weekend is. It feels like an event when you're there. That said, you have to keep it fresh somehow, right? And I think by moving the championship race on a yearly basis, you're keeping it a little bit more exciting. You're keeping the teams a little bit more on edge because NASCAR is a very unique sport where certain teams do have a certain advantage at one racetrack style over another. And so if you vary that on a yearly basis, I think that just keeps it a little bit more fresh, a little bit more interesting.
You said, Jordan, that NASCAR is making an investment in this, and it's been supported. Clearly, the championship race has been supported in Phoenix. Can they be guaranteed to get the same support? And obviously, you talked about they're footing the bill on it. They hope to get the support from the state, from the city, and the county around there. Will they get the fan support?
They should, because if you look at recent Homestead races, they've had a leadership change there. New track presidents come in. and made a lot of strong inroads into that market. They've really tapped into the South Florida, Miami market and figured out a way to get fans to that racetrack. You know, the March race there, well attended, and ticket sales were really slow about 2 months out. And then they really hit on it and they got it. And the attendance was actually really good for that race. So they've made inroads there. This isn't like it was towards the latter part of when Homestead hosted the championship. And it was a struggle to sell tickets. People don't realize that. I mean, it sold out, but it was a late sellout. And so you're not going to see that, I don't think. And I think having it on a 1-year basis, by the way, is going to help. Because if you're a fan in South Florida, you're saying, you can no longer say, hey, yeah, we're going to go next year instead. Now it's, if we don't go now, we're going to have to wait 2, 3, how many number of years. There creates a little bit of urgency. And like we've seen with, let's say, North Wilkesboro, Bowman Gray, Iowa, Rockingham, Clash, all these new venues that have come on. What happens that first year? Excitement and energy, and then it kind of tapers off a little level year 2. I would say that because of this rotation, it's always going to feel like year 1 when you go back to these places, and so that should help create and elevate the excitement level.
Zach, do you agree with that? Do you think we're going to see the Homestead folks respond?
I think so, because Miami especially is a destination race. And when you're only racing there once a year, that itself makes that race special. It makes it more enticing to go see. The Cup Series won't have returned in a year and a half, basically, by the time NASCAR gets back there to run this championship race. I think the fans are going to respond to that, and it's going to feel big. It's going to feel like an event.
All right. You mentioned the rotation. Phoenix will be part of the rotation.
Sure.
But there are not a lot of options beyond that because of A, geography, and B, the calendar.
Weather. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and let's be honest. And Ben Kennedy said this week that, we're not going back to Daytona to close the season. So, I mean, and you would assume that not only is we're not going to close the season at Daytona because we're not going to open and close the season at Daytona, because I don't think he wants to close the season on a super speedway. So that takes Daytona out. That takes Talladega out. That probably takes Atlanta out.
Yep.
So your options, and if we're also going to assume you're not going to close the season on a street course or a road course.
Yeah, though this is just my opinion. I don't know if I would completely close the door on that if I'm NASCAR. And I know, Ben.
A super speedway or
road
course?
Road course. And I only say that, and the super speedway makes sense. I get it. You don't really want to do that. You want to put drivers in control of their own championship fate. This sport for a long time was set. The last race of the calendar was settled on a road course. People forget Riverside used to open and close the championship. And if you're trying to put it in the driver's hands, there's some good road courses that fit the calendar and the geography. And so I wouldn't close that door yet, but I'm not NASCAR. But when you look at it from their perspective, you're limited, right? Yes. The 3 tracks that come immediately to mind, Homestead, Phoenix, Las Vegas. Those are the 3. And then you start looking around a little bit and you're like, okay, I could make a case for Texas. They've had better racing there. They've had a double-digit increase in attendance. Major market. Okay. Kansas, great track. Great track. Weather's a little tricky. Could I do it? I could, but you're taking a risk. And then Charlotte. Let's not forget Charlotte. This is our home here, right? The weather in that time of year isn't bad. It's favorable. Major market. There's certainly ways to make this a big event in town, and the city would embrace it. So those are the tracks that immediately.
Do you run the Roval or do you run the Oval?
No, it's an oval. It's an oval. I'm not even going to entertain that question. It is an oval. I will tell you that right now. If, and this is a hypothetical, if Charlotte were ever to get the race, it is 100% on the oval. It is not going to be on the Roval. But that's something to keep in mind. And now there's some other venues on the kind of the edge there, like Nashville, or maybe Darlington or Martinsville, and you can make a pros and cons list. But those tracks that I listed, those 5 are really the 5 that I would really take a hard look at first. Specifically, though, Homestead, Phoenix, Vegas. Start there. Let's see how this rotation goes, and then we'll assess.
But if you want to throw a road course in, then you could look at now we could throw Coda in. Then you could throw Sonoma in.
You could. Yeah. I mean, again, exactly. And I'm just throwing this out there. What about Mexico City? And I know that time of year, they host a Formula One race late fall, so you're kind of bumping up against it a little bit, but you could still maybe figure it out. And if you look at where some road courses are throughout this country, you've got some possibilities as well. So again, that's why I wouldn't close the door, because if you keep the door open for the road courses, you do create some more possibilities in some major cities, San Francisco, for example. And so we'll see what happens. But I think starting on the ovals and seeing how this goes, I think is the key.
I do think this the championship race really has to stay on some semblance of a traditional oval. But I will say that if the playoff system goes unchanged, and we don't know that it will, but if it remains as is, only four drivers are going to be eligible for that championship anyway. So it's all it matters is whoever finishes highest that day. They don't need to win the race. Now, if you go to a street course, if you go to a road course, you're not guaranteed one of the more traditional guys to go win that race. Is that really a bad thing? I'm not really sure. We saw Shane Van Gisbergen come on the scene in Chicago and make a name for himself by winning in his debut. That in itself is a really neat story. But does that need to be on the championship weekend? I don't really think so. So to me, the championship race for now should remain on a traditional oval.
Zach, what would you like to see in the rotation?
Well, I think to Jordan's point, Homestead, Phoenix, Vegas really do make sense. Vegas has a history hosting the post-race or postseason banquet for a number of years as well. There's a lot to do in Vegas. It is a destination race, much like Miami is. Really, Charlotte is in that category too to me. I feel like some of the best racing we have all year is right here for the 600 every year. So I would not be opposed to see Charlotte in that rotation. I feel like that's probably the four that immediately come to mind, but I don't disagree that Texas is probably has earned a spot to at least be in the conversation. I don't know if it's there yet, but it's in the conversation.
Speaking of Vegas, would you guys worry about a championship in Vegas if F1 keeps coming to Vegas around Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, you have to consider it because you look at how the NASCAR championship is decided. It's usually the first or second week in November. 2 weeks later, Formula One's in town. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's two different audiences. It's two completely different forms of racing. And if I'm NASCAR and I'm looking at my options, we just ran them down. You don't have a lot of options. So you really can't be too picky on where you're going to go too much, because if you say, well, we can't go to Vegas because Formula One's there a couple weeks, like, great, then what? Now you just eliminated a track in a big market, an entertainment capital, fans, popular with fans, and by the way, it puts on great racing. Why are you doing that for former racing that I don't care? Like, I just don't think there's enough crossover there where you're going to impact it. Now, you have to have conversation with the city and some of the things like that and see if you can make it happen. And there might be some, a little bit there, but at the end of the day, I just don't see that as an issue.
Do you agree, Zach?
I do, because I think if you have the same conversation around Kansas City, the Chiefs are playing there every, in the fall as well. You're not going to take a race away from Kansas just because there's a little bit of, there's other stuff happening within that market. I think you got to keep Vegas in the conversation, even though you do have the Formula One race within a couple of weeks. To Jordan's point, I think it's just a conversation between NASCAR and city officials, which city officials wanted NASCAR to be there twice a year anyway. I think I would imagine that this was part of their hope, right, in getting a second date, is to eventually be in this conversation for a championship deciding race. To me, it makes too much sense for them to at least not be in the rotation.
We know one thing. Hotel rooms would not be an issue.
That's also very true.
Not in Vegas. All right, when we come back, we've talked about Texas as a possible destination for the championship race. Well, we saw a heck of a weekend at Texas last weekend, and it's become one of the more treacherous tracks. Is that good? Stay with us.
This is Kyle Petty for Echo Park Automotive, and I'm here to tell you why you should shop Echo Park before you buy a car, truck, or SUV. Over half of inventory at Echo Park is priced below $25,000. And car for car, truck for truck, Echo Park Automotive's pricing is $3,000 less than the competition. Maybe that's why Echo Park has over 95,000 five-star reviews. Echo Park Automotive is built to make sure you drive away happy. It's even in their name, Echo Park Automotive. Every car, happy owner. The official used car dealer of Speedway Motorsports.
We work hard to keep our cars looking great on the outside, but engine components need our attention too. That's where you can trust Z-Max Micro Lubricant to disperse carbon buildup in your engine and fuel system to keep your car or truck running at its peak. By soaking into the metal of your engine, Z-Max Micro Lubricant improves performance, extends engine life, and reduces emissions. Trust the many customers who've said, "Thanks for saving my engine." Find out more at zmax.com or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Catch Kyle Petty's Back Then Again Country Countdown with Charlie and Debbie here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
They have worn our nation's cloth under the red, white, and blue and paid the ultimate sacrifice to ensure freedom.
Start your engine!
Once again, it is the Coca-Cola 600 right here in Charlotte.
William Byron, Christopher Bell, neither one wanting to give an inch. They'll dive into turn number 2.
We've got a new leader in the Coca-Cola 600.
It's NASCAR's most challenging event, the Coca-Cola 600. Sunday, May 25th at 5 o'clock Eastern on PRN, the Performance Racing Network. The NASCAR Xfinity Series heads to Charlotte.
Allgaier down low. It's Gibbs to the high side. They stay door handle to door handle as they race off turn 4.
Chandler Smith will climb the hill. He'll go all the way to the outside wall in turn number 2. That opens the bottom lane.
Kyle Busch and Justin Allgaier trying to thread the needle through the field in a hurry. Jeff Burton's just trying to get out of the way, but he can't.
It's the BetMGM 300, Saturday, May 24th at 4 Eastern on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
Brett McMillan returns with more of the Pit Reporters here on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back, along with Zach Sterniolo from NASCAR.com and Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic. Brett McMillan, we're glad to have you with us. All right, wild weekend at Texas. It is becoming, and the word got used frequently, Zach, was treacherous. And I think it's getting compared a lot to Darlington now as far as a track that's very difficult to navigate and yet still's putting on a pretty good show.
I mean, the show has been great the last few years with this next-gen car. There's always been some level of unpredictability. The first year we saw tire issues. Second year, that bump in turns 3 and 4 really started to rear its head then, and that's been the case ever since. We saw that again on Sunday. Josh Berry spins from the lead, trying to get line up Cody Ware, trying to put him a lap down. Kyle Busch spins from third place. It's a very groove-sensitive racetrack now because that bump in turns 3 and 4 has become such a problem spot with the way that these cars are set up. The track, I don't know if I would put it in that Darlington category yet, just because how abrasive Darlington is, but the groove is narrow, right?
Yeah, nobody gets on a two-tire change at Darlington.
Yeah, that's right. But the groove is narrow, and so your margin of error is so slim. And I think that's why we saw a lot of the issues we saw, whether that was coming off turn 2 on the backstretch or through the centers of turns 3 and 4.
Jordan?
For Texas, for a long time, didn't have an identity. It was the intermediate track that nobody wanted to go and race at. The racing was just subpar. It was never to the standard that you would expect it to be at. And now, I'll say this, the racing at Texas is still okay. It's not great. It's certainly not to the level of Charlotte or Kansas or Vegas. You're not seeing a ton of side-by-side racing or, passing or, that kind of thing. It's still pretty good, and it's much better than it was. And then that accompanied with the fact that attendance is up double digits, they've done a really good job there. And I think you make the great point comparison to Darlington. I made this point earlier this week when I said that as much too. Like, it's a track that will bite you. And yeah, it doesn't chew up tires, but it is a track that will just grab you, and all of a sudden you're spinning out into the wall. And it's just not the bumps, by the way, in turn 4 and everything else. It's also the grass on the front stretch. Like, we've seen so many accidents going through there. This is a really treacherous track, and it makes it for entertaining. Now, entertaining doesn't mean great racing, but it's still entertaining. And you have unpredictability, and you have all of the elements that keep people wanting to watch of, like, what is going to happen next. That's good. And for a track that has long lacked an identity and has been heckled, and I made fun of Texas more than anybody, and I get it. It's now good. And it's one of those tracks you're like, we're going to Texas. All right, what are we going to see here? It's different, but that's a good different.
And I'll also throw in, too, that we have seen more passing at Texas in recent years, too. We saw Ryan Blaney and Denny Hamlin get penalized early in the race, and they were charging up through the field and made up about 12, 13 spots respectively before the next caution came out. So there is a path forward there. Tyler Reddick was charging through the field for a lot of that race on Sunday as well. Didn't get the brakes on the restarts, but the point is, on a long green flag run, you can still move forward. It's not the easiest place to pass like we're going to see at Kansas or at Charlotte within the next couple of weeks, but it's possible.
It's funny because I was talking to one of the crew chiefs, a couple of the crew chiefs Sunday morning after watching the truck race and the Xfinity race where guys kept catching that grass on the front stretch and spinning out. I said, have you kind of made it clear to your driver to stay out of the grass? He goes, I told him the only time I want to see him in the grass is when he's doing burnouts at the end of the race.
Well, some people are saying to me like, well, they should just get rid of the grass or like maybe scale it back. I'm like, no, don't. Like, this is what you need. You want this track to be challenging. You want it to put drivers in a bad spot, because when drivers are in a corner and they're uncomfortable, that's typically when the races are the most entertaining. So no, don't do anything to the grass. I heard some people banding about put down the synthetic stuff. No, just leave it the way it is. You got the grass, you got the bump in turn 4. It's perfect.
I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it change to turf like we have at Charlotte, but at the same time, that's the same grass that's been there for over 25 years. So I don't know why it was such a massive issue this weekend either.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, look who ends up in victory lane. You don't talk about Joey Logano most of the day. And the thing is, the guys who ended up at front at the end of the race were guys that started back in the mid-20s and into the 30s. So obviously, there was an ability to pass somewhere along the line, or to make moves on pit road, strategic moves on pit road.
Yeah, it's not, like I said, it's not nearly like it used to be where it was single file, everybody gets strung out, and you were just stuck. You can still pass. Now, it's not to the same level that you're going to see at other intermediate racetracks, but you could pass. And Zach is right. We saw Ryan Blaney do it. We saw Logano do it. We saw Hamlin do it. And you had, some of that was 2-tire calls or getting the right caution. Sure. But it's still ability to pass, which is better than before. Again, not to the level that I would say we'd all agree we want to see at an intermediate racetrack, but it was certainly much higher than before. And that's a huge gain for a track that is, frankly, for many years, not been very good.
Well, look, we'll talk about Joey Logano. I mean, in some ways, he's just kind of that silent assassin. And I go way back myself, and I know a lot of folks who listen to this show have never seen David Pearson race.
Yeah.
But very Pearson-esque, where he's not there for a lot of the day, that all of a sudden at the end of the day, there he is, and making the trip to victory lane. And we'll talk about Joey Logano and his win and the disappointment that was Michael McDowell when we come back.
Look, how do you feel today? Maybe you're a little hungover again, feeling a little embarrassed about a few things? Listen, why haven't you called yet to get help? Man, aren't you tired of feeling this way? So listen, whatever your party drug of choice is, there are ways to get clean and sober, especially if it's messing with your life. Hey man, we all have choices. You can make a choice right here, right now, today, to call the number I'm about to give you and start a brand new life without drugs or booze. I know it's hard to think about this, but imagine how great your life could be. And all it takes is one simple phone call. I've got a team of people standing by ready to check your insurance and let you know what it takes to get clean and sober. Okay, so get ready to save this number, because here it comes.
800-296-1140. 800-296-1140. 800-296-1140. That's 800-296-1140. Paid for by the Detox Treatment Helpline.
Mark Garrow's your host for Garage Pass, here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
Anytime you get somebody at the front of the pack who's not used to running up there and who's not been there, the established names are going to scream. They're going to cry. They're going to whine. Oh, there's somebody else coming up here to get my trophy and get my money. It's Carson Hocevar. What's he doing up here? He had just as much right to get in there and force the issue. And if not for the caution, he's a race winner.
Hey, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. That's Fast Talk right here on PRN.
Local radio brings people together like never before.
It's a beautiful hometown weekend out there. We've got
your local stations keep you informed and involved with music, talk shows, and real-time news updates you can trust. We are live and local. We are America's broadcasters, connecting you to what matters most. Text radio to 52886 and tell Congress to support your local radio stations.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to STOP.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
We're back with more of the Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back, along with Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic, Zach Sterniolo from NASCAR.com. I'm Brett McMillan. Glad to have you with us. Interesting that Joey Logano now is within 2 wins of tying Rusty Wallace for the most wins for Roger Penske.
I mean, makes sense, right? I mean, he's been there since 2013. And, won 3 championships, won a bunch of races. And Rusty had some great years, but he also, towards the end of his career, kind of tailed off a little bit. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. And Joey's, he's Penske. He is Penske when you think of Penske, and what he has done is impressive. And the fact that he's got 3 championships and honestly could probably add to that total here in the next few years, he's first ballot Hall of Famer. There's no doubt.
As long as the championship's at Phoenix.
His first one came at Homestead, by the way.
That's what we said earlier. Yeah, but the fans will forget that.
That's fine. And by the way, who was the fastest car? Ryan Blaney was fastest car at Homestead. So this year, so
exactly.
We'll see.
And remember, Logano won at Vegas last year too, which we keep talking about being part of that rotation, possibly as like an option. So I mean, people sleep on Team Penske.
But I did hear Logano this week in his appearance in Sirius talk about that Michael McDowell took him down to the infield, and Joey said, "Hey, look, if it had been me, I would have done the same thing. What McDowell did was completely in bounds. The question is, how far are you going to go and push it and still give yourself an out to pull back up?" And he said basically he and McDowell basically about the same time said, "Okay, it's time to pull back out of this." And Logano he and Paul Wolfe just kind of worked it all day long because he did not start off very good.
No, do not play chicken with Joey Logano. Joey Logano will beat you every single time, and this is what makes Logano so good. I will contend that since Kevin Harvick is now retired, the nickname the closer should be shifted over to Logano, because to your point earlier, this is what he does. If you put him in a position to win a race, he wins a race. How many times do we talk about drivers throwing away wins, consecutively and so many times, right? Very rarely we say that about Logano. When you put him in a position, especially on an intermediate racetrack, these kind of things, he is a hungry bear, and he is going to eat. And the move he put on McDowell was amazing. Shoots down the inside, and McDowell was going to push him the wall. Joey wasn't going to lift. Like, you want to put me in the wall, you're going with me. And this is what Logano does. He is so good at the end of these races, and this is why he wins championships. When he has an opportunity to capitalize, he does. He doesn't let go. And this is the defining characteristic of him, is a tenaciousness and an ability to capitalize on other people's mistakes or weaknesses. And he has done it time and time again. And it is why he is a 3-time champion.
And let's not forget, this is off the heels of a 5th place disqualification 1 week prior at Talladega. It feels like any time that you put Joey Logano in a chance within striking distance of a win after the slightest bit of adversity, he will overcome. He has some sort of clutch gene that is within him, and therefore within that whole 22 team, that whenever there is a slight in against them, they will come out and they will be hungrier than ever, to Jordan's point. I don't know what it is, but I mean, you look at last week, you look at the playoffs in 2024, he was out. He was eliminated from the playoffs after that Roval race in October, and then Bowman gets disqualified, Logano's back in, and suddenly 1 week later he's winning his way into the championship 4. There is something within him and something within that 22 team that is clutch, and arguably more clutch than anyone else in this sport right now.
Meanwhile, his teammate Ryan Blaney, of course, big Star Wars fan, running on May the 4th, which of course was Star Wars Day, disappointingly did not dress up as Princess Leia or anything for the race. But he comes home. Finally, the guy gets something good going. Doesn't have bad luck. The bad luck that's been chasing him all year long. Gets out from under the black cloud. And I have never seen him as disappointed and irritated with himself at the end of a race as he was.
Yeah, I mean, Homestead last fall, I would put up there just because of the championship implications at that time. But you're right. I mean, and I think it's just what it is. It's been one thing on top of another. You look at the season consistently, regardless of the track, short track, super speedway, intermediate, road course, doesn't matter. Blaney's been fast, led a bunch of laps, ran inside the top 5 a bunch. Statistically, he's been one of, if not the absolute best drivers in teams this year. What does he has to show for it? He's got a bunch of stage points, but he's got no wins. And this is a win-in system. And the longer you go when you don't win, you start to feel a little bit more. Honestly, circumstances change a little bit here, a little bit there. 3-4 wins, blows an engine at Phoenix. Homestead blows an engine. Darlington late caution, and then the issue on pit road. You look at what happened at Texas. It's just been one thing after another. Again, I can understand the frustration because you don't know how long you're going to have this speed. Like, this is such a cyclical sport. You're on top of the world this week, and you can ride that wave for a little bit. But at some point, that wave comes down, and the speed that you had is no longer there, and then you're struggling to fight and to win races. You've got to capitalize when you get a chance. When you have fast race cars, you have to convert that into wins. They haven't done that, and so that's where the frustration is coming from.
And I think especially that frustration's there because, to the Star Wars point, feels like Michael McDowell played some Jedi mind tricks on him because he ends up not picking the front row on that restart with 23 to go. And I really feel like he feels like that was the difference because on that restart, McDowell gets the great launch and clears Larson before they get to turn one. If Blaney's in that same spot, arguably he gets that same kind of a restart. He clears out to the lead, and you don't know what happens at that point. Far be it for me to tell Ryan Blaney what decisions to make on a racetrack in a race car, but it feels like anytime you have an opportunity to be on the front row and have clean air on your nose at a 1.5 mile track, especially that late in the race, it feels like you have to capitalize on that. And I think that's why he's kicking himself so much because of that. Because once he fell back on that restart, there really was no recovery, even though there were a couple of opportunities after that.
And then finally, the question you asked Michael McDowell, and I think all of us agree, one of the nicest guys in the garage area. And I think anytime you see Michael McDowell running up front, you feel like this could be a really good story with Michael McDowell if he can pull off the win. Once he lost the lead, I know he was battling for second place, and he admits he was still going for it and trying to get the win, which would have been huge for Spire, no doubt about it. But sometimes taking a third place is better than ended up in the wall, and ended up in the 20s.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, once you lose the lead, you've just got to acknowledge, like, Logano's going to run away from me here. He's got fresher tires. We'll take our top 5, and this is a good day for us. I also understand, like, we got to fight and scrap, and you know what? You get a caution. You never know what's going to happen. How many times we saw Josh Berry get into the wall in turn 4 when he's leading? You don't know. So you don't want to take anything for advantage. And for that team, points are great. You can talk about the points all you want to, like, oh, they can point their way in. The reality is, the likelihood is if the 71 team is going to make the playoffs, it is going to be on a win, not on points. And they have to get it along the way. And so if your opportunity, you're sitting there second or third, you got to go for it because you don't know how many opportunities you're going to have to get that win potentially. So yeah, hindsight being 2020, yeah, I mean, a third place finish, you take it and you go home and you're happy with it. But also you look at the circumstances and the events of that race. I understand where he's coming from.
How do you feel, Zach?
To me, I feel like you've got to take the top 5 and build some momentum for the next week, especially when you're going back to a 1.5 miles. You can start to build on that. And Kansas has not been a good track for Michael McDowell in years past. Now with a new team, same crew chief, but clearly building that notebook. I think they got the pole at Las Vegas earlier this year as well. So they have been very strong on these intermediate tracks. You've got to build upon that. And I think you do that by taking your third place finish, being frustrated that you didn't get the win, but maximizing your day, right? And I don't know that hitting the wall that late in the race and ending up with the 28th place finish instead is what you needed in that situation. Now, that said, to your point, Michael is one of the nicest guys in the garage, and I absolutely believe he was doing everything he could to maximize that day, right, and to capitalize on the position he had. But when Blaney gets by you or starts to clear you off turn 2, there's that moment of concession, right? And you've got to kind of just reevaluate the situation where you're at and kind of avoid just what happened there and getting into the wall. It's obviously a lot easier to said than done. It's unfortunate, but to me, I feel like you just got to leave the racetrack with a clean race car and a top 5 finish.
Well, each week of the Pit Reporters will give you a chance to go to GoPRN and vote in our poll. And this week's poll is, do you like the new image of Texas as treacherous? Yes or no? Last week we asked you, how does Ryan Blaney change his luck? 34% of you said he needs to carry a rabbit's foot. 30% said he needs to put his shoes on in a different order. Okay. 21% said go see a witch doctor. And 14% said throw salt over his left shoulder. So we have a wide variety, but between carry a rabbit's foot and put his shoes on a different order, that might help.
I'm not a superstitious person. I don't believe in it. So I just think you keep putting yourself in position. Eventually things will come your way. But again, they've had a lot of opportunities and a lot of missed opportunities at that.
Yep. Just throw some cold water on the whole thing.
That's what I'm here for.
He's spoiling it.
Hey, listen.
Wet blanket.
Wet blanket. There you go. When we come back.
If he picks the front row, he's all good.
There you
yeah,
he wouldn't
probably.
have needed any of that. If he'd had a rabbit's foot in his pocket, maybe he would have.
Yeah, right.
When we come back, we now have 4 more intermediate tracks in a row, not counting the All-Star race. What did we learn at Texas? Who's going to be good these next 5 weeks? Stay with us.
This is Kyle Petty for Echo Park Automotive. As you might imagine, I know a thing or two about cars, and I'm here to tell you about a whole new way to buy a car, truck, or SUV. Did you know that Echo Park Automotive has over 95,000 five-star reviews? On top of that, every car that Echo Park Automotive sells goes through a 190-point inspection to make sure that it looks and drives like new, so you leave happy. It's even in their name, Echo Park Automotive. Every car, happy owner. The official used car dealer of Speedway Motorsports.
Drivers, start your engines!
Atlanta Motor Speedway is built for battles, high speeds, tight packs, dramatic finishes.
Crossover move! They're 3 wide for the lead!
But you've never seen Atlanta Motor Speedway like this, under the lights, where every moment feels bigger. Experience the Quaker State 400, available at Walmart Saturday, June 28th. Under the lights in Atlanta. Get your tickets now at atlantamotorspeedway.com.
Lenny Baticki brings you PRN at the Track every week here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
Whether it's skating around the racetrack on a set of rollerblades or turning laps in a Legends car, join JC Fickenshire on JC's Garage.
All it takes is one win, and that one win can completely clear the driver's mind. I could even see it happening if Todd Gilliland wins a race or Noah Gragson wins a race, Zane Smith wins a race. These guys are guys who are just searching for one win, one chance.
JC's Garage, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Hey, it's Charlie and Debbie, along with NASCAR legend Kyle Petty, inviting you to join us for Kyle Petty's Back Then Again Country Countdown.
Each week, we'll put it in reverse and take a trip down memory lane, looking back at that week's top 20 country songs from years past.
We'll dive into what made those songs and artists move the needle, what pop culture trends made those years unique.
And you'll get to hear me tell stories only I can tell.
So don't miss Kyle Petty's Back Then Again Country Countdown right here each week.
Let's get back to more Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network.
Sweepstakes fans, start your entries. Visit echopark.com/speedway to enter for a chance to win a Toyota Tundra plus a brand new Thor camper. Visit echopark.com/speedway now, and you can drive off a winner. Welcome back to the Pit Reporters, along with Zach Sterniolo from NASCAR.com and Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic. Brett McMillan, glad to have you with us. All right, Zach, last week's race at Texas was the first of 5 consecutive points races at intermediate tracks. Got some 1.5 miles, then a 1.25 miles, then a 2 mile, but they're all intermediate tracks. This is the bread and butter of the schedule. We understand that. And we always hear, we're going to know what we have by the 600. But once we get past Michigan on that 2 mile track, we go to a lot of road courses, got another super speedway or street course, and there's going to be a lot of tracks here and not a lot of opportunity to make up or re-find out what you got in an intermediate package before the playoffs start. So what did we learn at Texas? Who has their stuff together, or who really needs to start worrying about where they're at?
To me, the team with speed that really impressed me on Sunday was Tyler Reddick in that 45 car. We've heard we've made a speculation about the 45 team kind of being off a little bit to start the season. They haven't been really getting the results, and unfortunately, that was the case on Sunday as well. They finished outside the top 20. That said, they had some of the best speed early in that race. He arguably was going to win both of those first 2 stages, if not for late cautions in both of them. I really think that 45 team is ready to make another run here over these next 4 or so weeks. Kansas has been a great track for 23XI. On the other side of that coin, though, Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez both left Texas with top 10 finishes, but they were significantly lacking in speed. According to NASCAR Insights, Chastain was 22nd ranked on speed and Suarez was 28th. I've never heard Ross Chastain be so critical post-race of his equipment. He said, got out of the car Saturday and said that speed on Saturday has been terrible for the Trackhouse racing cars, and he spoke for all 3 drivers. That is very interesting to me. That said, he's been able to overcome a lot of those deficits, and I think has 6 top 10s in these first 11 races. He's done a great job behind the wheel, but if I'm Trackhouse Racing, I am concerned about how we're qualifying and what our speed is showing throughout the course of a race weekend at this point.
What are your thoughts, Jordan, looking at these guys after Texas?
I mean, we're starting to see the cream rise to the top. And as we go here, you've got Kansas, you've got Charlotte, you've got Nashville, you've got Michigan. You're going to see, I think, probably quote unquote, the usual suspects come to the forefront. You got Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, Tyler Reddick, Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, the names that really come to mind. You could maybe make a case for Chase Elliott, though. There's a different question there altogether about whether he can win or not. But those 6 guys are the guys that are continually running up front. Now, they're not necessarily getting the finishes or the wins, in Blaney's case, but they are the guys who have the most speed, and they are executing the most. And when you look at the quote-unquote bread-and-butter tracks, the tracks where you need a great driver, a smart, sound pit crew who doesn't make mistakes, you need a smart strategist on the pit box, these guys have shined. And I think that's going to continue to be the case over these next few weeks. And I think as we look at it, I would bet the house that the championship is going to be one of those 6 guys at this point. Now, a lot can happen, and who knows? And Logano and Blaney have proven us wrong the last few years, but it certainly seems like these guys have kind of separated themselves right now and are starting to establish themselves. And I think these guys are going to start racking up the wins and their stage wins and a lot of points.
Well, Zach, and that's the kind of the point I'm looking at here, because, once you get finished with this 5-race stretch, we're going, you got Mexico, you got road course, then you got Pocono in there, you got Atlanta again, then you got, road, street course, then another road course. I mean, you're not going to have the opportunity to fix your intermediate track package before we get into the playoffs. And if you're struggling now, if you get out of this 5-race stretch and you feel like you're still struggling in your intermediate track package, you haven't set yourself up well for the playoffs at all. I don't care if you get a win on a road course or not.
Well, that's why another name that comes to mind that Jordan didn't list is that 20th car of Christopher Bell. He got he went on a 3-race tear earlier this year on a trio of different racetracks, right? But he was kind of invisible at Texas last weekend. That said, he leaves with the top 10 finish, so you're not hitting panic buttons if you're him or Adam Stevens at this point. But I was a little bit surprised just how invisible he was. I think Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole, the 20, the 54, the 19. Obviously, Denny had his own issues not getting with an engine that expired in stage 1. But I just felt like they were kind of missing something at Texas that leaves me questioning things a little bit. So to your point, if they don't figure it out over these next 4 intermediate racetracks, you're kind of concerned, I would say, at the intermediate tracks moving forward. That said, it's Joe Gibbs Racing. I don't know how. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go out and even win this weekend at Kansas.
Zach brings up the point with Denny's engine expiring, and I think we've seen more engines expire this year, Jordan, than we have in recent years. I mean, you think about, we've seen a couple of Penske's, we saw Denny's. That's not something we've seen a lot. You kind of feel in recent years like these engines have been bulletproof. What do you think we're seeing?
Well, they largely have come on intermediate racetracks, which is you're
which is a concern.
Which means you're on the gas pretty much the entirety of the lap there. So high horsepower, high revs, a lot of strain on the engine. And also in Hamlin's case, if I believe this is correct, I have to go back and check my notes, that engine had been used 3 times. And so it's kind of towards the end of its life cycle as well. So yeah, it's a concern, but I think that's just part of the racing night now is everybody is absolutely looking for every edge possible. And the car is kind of the car at this point. There was no off-season rule changes, so you're really confined to the box, and there's only so much you can do to the car at this point. And I think teams have kind of exhausted that largely. Whereas maybe you start playing with engines and maybe you try to be a little bit more aggressive in how you go things. That would make sense, and it also fits in line with the fact that some of these engine failures have occurred on intermediate racetracks.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out over the next few weeks and how that kind of
sets the tone.
The tone, for what we're going to see in the playoffs. When we come back, Kansas is up next. Stay with us.
For anyone who's worried about back taxes, has not filed tax returns, and doesn't know what to do next, stop and listen. Not filing your taxes can have severe consequences, especially in this political climate. Now that COVID is over, the IRS is getting aggressive, massively increasing enforcement and collection efforts, with politicians making all sorts of promises, especially when it comes to taxes. Hiding and not dealing with your taxes will cause you harsh legal and financial ramifications. But right now, the IRS offers forgiveness and writes off a massive amount of tax debt. The Tax Doctor offers a free service that helps people get out of IRS collections and back in good standing with the government. Don't hide or bury your head in the sand. Take advantage of our free service. Call now to learn more. 800-393-5045. 800-393-5045. 800-393-5045. That's 800-393-5045.
Doug Rice is your host for Fast Talk every week on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
Start your engine!
Reddick goes right to the bottom of the racetrack. Chastain tries to hold on the outside. Truex on the inside. Byron in the middle. Chastain up high.
Hamlin now beginning to come to the front. He's got the edge now. He'll take the lead away.
Brian Blaney sliding down into the grass. There was a lot of bumping and grinding. And Blaney noses into the infield retaining wall.
Ross Chastain doing a great job. Truex right there, big in his mirror as they race down the backstretch here.
Harrison Burton is spinning down the back straightaway. Everybody going to the top side.
Here comes Kyle Larson. Larson dives to the bottom of the racetrack. He wants to lead all four.
Chris Buescher has the advantage and a spin off of turn 4.
Yeah, we've got a ton of cars that are in this one, and Larson is certainly one of those cars.
Trouble coming out of turn 4. Hamlin is sideways. The car spins down on the apron of the racetrack.
Byron takes that brightly painted number 24 to the front. He gets a big shove from Daniel Suarez.
This is PRN.
Brett McMillan returns with more of the Pit Reporters here on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back. Jordan Bianchi and Zach Sterniolo are here. Before we talk about Kansas, some unfinished business with Joey Logano. Apparently Chipper Jones did congratulate Joey, and Joey put on a Braves hat in victory lane. So apparently they've buried the hatchet, or whatever hatchet there was to bury.
That's no fun. We needed feuds. We like feuds. Like this is
well, yeah, but
good.
among drivers, we don't need it between baseball Hall of Famers and Logano.
Listen, there are no driver feuds at the moment. I take them where I get them. Okay. Like if no one else is going to call out Logano, like let Chipper Jones do it then.
Sure.
That and then the other one is Zach. Kyle Busch is 40. He turned 40 last weekend.
He's 40.
We've known the guy since he was a teenager. Imagine how he goes. Yeah, tell me about it. I'm going. Yeah, imagine how we feel. We know you since you were a teenager.
Well, 2001, he was getting kicked out of racetracks because he wasn't old enough to race, and now he's the elder statesman of the NASCAR Cup Series.
Gosh.
I think we knew the day would come eventually, but the fact that it's here now is kind of almost hard to accept.
Moving on.
Ready for retirement?
Got a cane?
Yeah.
Moving on. All right. We touched a little bit on Kansas this week. Kansas has been putting out possibly the best racing in the series the last few years, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, it is the best track right now. I mean, I guess you could maybe say Homestead, but it's 1A, 1B. Kansas just delivers. And even with the older car, it was still a really good racetrack. And it was even that time when intermediate racetracks were just so. Kansas always stood out. It's one of those tracks you circle now and say, this is phenomenal. And unlike some of the other tracks we mentioned, this also is a playoff track. Texas is not a playoff track. Charlotte Oval is not a playoff track. And so this week at Kansas is a good gauge to see where people are at, to go back to your earlier point, because what you do here may carry over to the fall. And so it's going to be interesting to see. And as we talk about this, you bring up Ross Chastain, there's some other guys too. It's like, it's really hard to play catch up when you're behind on intermediate racetracks. And that's why I always say the big dogs eat on these racetracks. And it just feels like another weekend where somebody's going to rise up again. And that small group we have, and they're going to end up in victory lane, and we'll see if anybody else can do it. A year ago, Chris Buescher almost did it, but it's really, really hard here to do that.
I was reading something this week about the kind of the butterfly effect. And I think it was Jeff Gluck wrote it. Your
colleague,
teammate, colleague, whatever.
Yeah, same
thing. Was right, but the butterfly effect, that if Buescher had won that race and lost just by a hair, that Joey Logano would not even made the playoffs, even after the Bowman disqualification, because that would have given Buescher the win. That would have got him in, and he would have had a win in the playoffs, and the whole butterfly effect of that thing. And boy, you remember how upset Buescher was after Darlington when he didn't get the win, and
because he knew, he knew that any missed opportunity is exactly that. It's a missed opportunity. You don't get those back. So he was frustrated last year at Darlington when Tyler Reddick put him in the wall. He was more heartbroken on pit road at Kansas a year ago, losing by 1,000th of a second. And arguably, I don't even know if it was that close. It seemed even tighter than that. I don't know that you can get any closer to winning a NASCAR Cup Series race than Chris Buescher came at Kansas last year without doing so. Every week matters. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes with this win and you're in format. Every week matters. Joey Logano winning last week at Texas changes his whole season now. Chris Buescher losing those 2 races a year ago really matters. Kansas, though, provides an opportunity for some of those guys, to Jordan's point, to put themselves in the conversation. Chastain was not in the playoffs by the time he won that race in the fall last year. And suddenly he enters this year looking for a turnaround for his 2025 campaign. Is he poised to go on a run this weekend and put himself back in that conversation? RFK Racing, the 17 and the 60 have had speed pretty much every week. Now, the 6, unfortunately, is a different conversation at this point, but the 17 and the 60 have had that speed. I would imagine that that's going to translate from what we saw at Texas, where they came with speed once again and had fast race cars. I imagine that's going to carry over to Kansas. So what are we going to see from them? Kansas is just a phenomenal racetrack. It is everything right with this car right now. It is everything right with NASCAR racing as a whole right now. So I'm excited to get out there and see what we see.
2311 owned this track for a couple of years. Can they recapture some of that magic, Jordan?
Well, they should. I mean, on the surface, they are really good on intermediate racetracks. We saw this at Texas. Both Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace were fast. Now Bubba got into a crash and didn't get the finish, and Reddick was in the mix there at the end, and he got spun out as well. Go back to last year, though. Neither Bubba nor Tyler Reddick finished in the top 10 at Kansas. So this is surprisingly was not a strong suit for them last year. Now, is that an anomaly or a trend? We'll see. I would say it's more of an anomaly. I think they're going to be fine. I think this is a really good opportunity for Reddick to get in victory lane. And then Bubba is, previous winner here as well. So this is a really good racetrack for Toyota overall. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Tyler Reddick or Bubba Wallace victory lane. And I'll throw another name out there too. Don't sleep on Ty Gibbs. Like, he's really come onto his own last few weeks. Terrible start to the year. Had some speed, led some laps. Don't be shocked if he's in victory lane on Sunday.
Well, and to your point, Zach, about having a win in your pocket. I mean, look at Josh Berry last week, running away at Texas. Great car. Think how crushed he'd be if he didn't have that Vegas win in his pocket.
It's a huge, huge weight off your shoulder. You can't even really quantify how much that Vegas win means, because effectively anything else that happens from this point forward for him, it still matters. I want to be clear on that. But you can afford those mulligans, right? You can afford a DNF here every once in a while. Now, if you want to make it out of the first round of the playoffs, I would disagree with that. And I think he's going to pay the price for being, 24th in points as it stands right now. It's not great for that 21 Wood Brothers team on the point standings. So he's going to need to work to get some playoff points and really build upon that so he has more cushion by the time the playoffs roll around. But he can leave Texas feeling a little bit better because he's got that win in his pocket.
Yeah, and he had a fast car.
He did. Without that Las Vegas win, Josh Berry's Michael McDowell, where you're sitting there going, woulda, shoulda, coulda. What did you do? Maybe should have approached this differently? But to Zach's point, you kind of shrug your shoulders and say, okay, yeah, we'll go get him next time. We're okay. But at some point, it's going to bite you because you're not going to have playoff points. Maybe it doesn't matter when you look at how the first round sets up. Those are tracks that should play to his strengths as a driver, but you don't know. But if I'm Josh Berry and the Wood Brothers, I'm just living it. I'm loving it right now. We've got fast cars. We're running well on a weekly basis. Things are good.
And you're going back to an intermediate track, which is where he won back in March.
Yep, absolutely. When we come back, white flag laps.
This is Kyle Petty for Echo Park Automotive. As you might imagine, I know a thing or two about cars, and I'm here to tell you about a whole new way to buy a car, truck, or SUV. Did you know that Echo Park Automotive has over 95,000 five-star reviews? On top of that, Every car that Echo Park Automotive sells goes through a 190-point inspection to make sure that it looks and drives like new, so you leave happy. It's even in their name, Echo Park Automotive. Every car, happy owner. The official used car dealer of Speedway Motorsports.
Whether your engine runs daily or only when you need it, Z-Max Micro Lubricant is the force you need against carbon buildup that can damage your engine. Combustion causes carbon and other harmful deposits to build up in your engine, fuel system, and transmission. And carbon is like sandpaper rubbing against your engine's internal parts. You don't want that. You want Z-Max Micro Lubricant. It soaks into metal and keeps your vehicle running at peak performance. Find out more at zmax.com or visit us on Facebook and Twitter. Protect your engine to the max with Z-Max.
Catch Kyle Petty's Back Then Again Country Countdown with Charlie and Debbie here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network. A NASCAR memory with Doug Rice and Kyle Petty.
One of the most iconic moments in the history of the sport. Your dad and David Pearson racing for the win at Daytona 76.
I learned more from my dad in that moment than probably all the years of being his son before that. Ran that race, comes down to the last lap. Pearson passes Petty, Petty passes Pearson. My dad passes him going into turn 3, sweeps up in front of him. They kind of cross over. They get together coming out of turn 4. Even though they're running 180, 90, 200 miles an hour, it's the most slow motion wreck in the history of time. As you watch my dad spin and spin down into the grass, you watch Pearson's car with the front end just caved in come to a stop. And we all leave pit road and run out to the grass. You can see it's myself, it's Barry Dodson, it's Wade Thornburg, it's Dale Inman. We run out and we push the car across the line. We didn't know that if you help the car across the line on the last lap, you're penalized the lap. So if you go back and look at that, my dad finished one lap down in the Daytona 500 that year.
We're back with more of the Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back. Time now for our white flag laps. And first up from The Athletic, it's Jordan Bianchi.
Take a listen during driver introductions and you're going to hear one unmistakable thing. It's Joey Logano receiving the loudest boos of any driver. It doesn't make sense, though. Fans say they want a driver who goes for it, who's aggressive, who's unapologetic, right? Well, they also want winner. Well, guess what? Logano checks all those boxes. But for whatever reason, probably because you wrecked your favorite driver at some point, fans do not respond to Joey Logano. He doesn't care, though. What he does is he goes out and wins. And again, week after week, year after year, he has become this year's closer. Kevin Harvick retired. This is now Logano's time. He is the closer of the modern day. If you put him in contention late, he's going to find a way to win. It is the backbone of why he's a 3-time champion, and it is the backbone of why he's going to likely be a 4-time champion in the not too distant future.
And he also comes on Sirius about 3 times a month and takes your phone calls.
That too.
What else do you want? All right, next up from NASCAR.com, Zach Straniolo.
Kyle Busch is 40 years old now and officially an elder statesman of the sport. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but the fact that he is at this point in his career now, he is on the backside of it. We have to accept that. But we also have to accept that he is one of the greatest drivers to have ever done this. 232 National Series wins. I don't think he's done yet. I know the results have not been there for him or the 8 team since the middle of 2023. I still think there is more left within Kyle Busch. We saw him running up front at Texas. We saw him running up front at Kansas last fall. I don't think a win is in the very distant future for that number 8 team anymore.
All right. Will be interesting to watch him because, I agree. I think there are wins coming still for him. Well, I think the whole thing with Homestead is very interesting to see the championship race go back to Homestead because we hear the drivers rave about how much they love that track and how much they love running there and how competitive it is. And I'll be interested to see how much the community embraces it. There's a lot going on in South Florida, especially in the fall. But we'll see how much they can embrace having it back. And I think Jordan makes a great point. Having it come back on a 1-year basis, it's new, it's exciting. Maybe that's the kind of support that they need. Phoenix has done a great job with it, and I'm glad Phoenix will still be in the rotation. And I like the idea of rotation. I'm curious to see what NASCAR is going to come up with for a 3rd or a 4th track in this rotation. As we talked about, geography and climate make a big difference, and there are not a lot of options out there. So we'll see how it all plays out. I like the idea of Vegas. Could there be a Texas? Could there be a Charlotte? Road course would be interesting. We'll see how that all plays out, but the future is definitely going to be interesting. All right, guys, real quickly, who do you like this week at Kansas?
Kyle Larson.
Kyle Larson.
I'll take Tyler Reddick.
Oh, we'll see how it all plays out. Thank you for being with us, Jordan. Zach, thank you, guys. We'll talk to you next week on The Pit Reporters.
Join us again next week for The Pit Reporters on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.